What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave live every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I got a really very special guest tonight. I'm very excited to bring him on. But before I do that, you guys know a couple things around here that I like to go over. Mott's applesauce, we always got to address that right off the bat. Then after that, I got to, of course, say I have a couple things I want to say regarding what happened last week. I held off my show last Monday after what happened last weekend, and that was a tragedy that nobody wants to ever see, and it seems to be something that happens way too often in our country, specifically the United States, and it's really becoming a shame. And the thing that catches me on, I don't want to turn this into a big old thing, but the thing that catches me the worst, the hardest about this entire situation is the fact that it's something that continues to happen and something that for some reason doesn't appear to be changed, or there's no attempted change in this country with what goes on with gun violence and racism, the deep-rooted racism that exists not only in our community but amongst the entire country. And acts of terrorism such as this, they happen far too often, and it just doesn't seem like anything is done about it. So, of course, the tragedy in itself is so awful. Just to me, what's equally as awful is the fact that nothing's done about it. And I want to remember the 10 victims that did lose their lives that day. It was just an awful day for the community of Buffalo. But the important thing is that our community is so tight, and what Bills Mafia and what the city of Buffalo really comes together the most is when we all have to come together. And that's what makes us the great community that we all know and love. But of course, let's try and keep things upbeat, guys. We're going to kick it right off. We have my guest, Kendall, coming in. Kendall from Cover One. He is one hell of a guest. Kendall, welcome on, man. I'm excited to have you.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I've seen snippets of this show before on the Twitter sphere, and I'm excited to be a part of it, man.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good time. So if you guys don't know who Kendall is a member of Cover One. This guy is one of the smartest guys you can follow on Twitter in the entire Bills community, probably on all of NFL Twitter. He's a genius, and he knows his stuff. He watches every single little bit of film on probably any player you have a question about. So if you have a question about a player, you go ahead and you ask Kendall what is going on. And you can make sure to go check him out on his Twitter at Mirsky Kendall. You can check him out on Cover One. He's got a lot of awesome work over there as well. But like I said, I feel like sometimes I know my stuff, but I feel outclassed when I get to share the stage with you, man, truthfully.
Appreciate that. I can't wait for like that oversell of you saying all of that stuff, me being a genius, and then the trivia comes in and I'm just like missing everything, question after question after question. I can't wait. My skills are very specialized.
Yeah, but I think they're very based on evidence, and I feel like that's very rare in the football world. People love to run their mouths without anything to back it up, and you certainly have more than enough evidence to back up whatever claims that you have to make on Twitter, on your shows or whatever it might be. But you truthfully are one of the smartest guys in the community, and really that's not a bluff. I truthfully mean that. So we're going to kick it right off. Let's not waste any more time. We're going to start with the recent events. So today, 2 days ago, I don't remember when it happened, to be honest, but Jadeveon Clowney re-signed with the Cleveland Browns, 1 year, $11 million. He was kind of floating around the free agent market for a little bit of time. Wasn't sure where he was going to go. I feel like he kind of gotten forgotten in the entire mix, and he eventually re-signed with Cleveland. Do you think this helps their defense, or was he kind of just a shell of his former self, what we saw from him last year?
It's tough to say it helps the defense because it's literally a lateral move. Like it's someone that was brought back. But relative to not having him, it helps their defense. And I think, who was it? Someone joined our, it was Burn River Sports. Rich came on the show for our live draft coverage, and he came in on day 2, I believe. And he was talking about how we need a pass catcher. He's a Browns fan. We need a pass catcher and we need an edge rusher. And during his time on the show, they drafted both of those 2 positions. And of course, they drafted, who was it? Alex Wright out of UAB, Alabama, Birmingham. And I like the player a lot. He's a really good statistical player. Like analytically, he is up there as one of the best pass rushers in this draft class. But he was playing at a bit lower level of competition. So you want to make sure he has some sort of competition in the room to help sharpen his skills. You don't want to leave it up to this rookie to go ahead and start right away. I believe he was a 3rd round draft pick. So I think bringing him back is good. I think at the figure, it's a little pricey. I think people could definitely get behind that. But the other thing is, I saw this the other day. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter. Hansel put out the vote asking if Jadeveon Clowney is a bust or not. And I saw that, and it just like it ruffled my feathers, and I was just mashing the no button because yes, he's been a bust relative to the overall selection that he was. But let's not forget the production that he's had. It's not like he's just some bum like out of the league in 3 years. Like he's had multiple contracts. Yeah, he's had trouble sticking on teams. I think this is the first time that he's actually signed a second contract with one team. But I mean, he's still a good player. He's just not what we thought he was going to be coming out of South Carolina.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I would say that his early years in the NFL, he was making that kind of impact. I would say he was making a #1 overall pick impact for the Houston Texans. And, truthfully, I think a lot of that drop off or what people are thinking in relative to being a bust is just, his lack of namesake. How do I want to put this? He hasn't been in the news lately. He doesn't make the big flashy plays like he used to. His plays certainly dropped off, but at the end of the day, like Jadeveon Clowney, what he did, especially early in his career, I don't think that warrants him being a bust. I mean, we've seen busts that are truthfully busts that fit that narrative a lot more than Jadeveon Clowney was. So that was a poll that I saw, and I was like, I guess it's a good question, but
it is.
There really is no. Bust is a much better word for other guys. I would say that longevity-wise, probably not the best #1 overall pick, but he certainly, I think, fits the bill of, being a very solid choice at that situation. Mm-hmm. So that was that. And Jadeveon Clowney, so he does resign. I don't really think it's, like you said, it doesn't move the needle that much. He didn't make that large of an impact. It's going to be Myles Garrett's show on that defense, and Jadeveon Clowney just along for the ride. But the second thing that also happened, which is a little bit straightforward, but I saw this piece of news. Deshaun Watson's suspension to be determined before the season begins. And that sounds like very obvious, right? Of course. But just for the NFL and the way they've handled these situations before, I wasn't even sure this guy was going to get suspended in the first place. Like I was 99.9% positive, but just because it's the NFL, I was like, you know what? I would not even be shocked if they just completely forgot about this and threw it in the back end. So he is going to get suspended. How many games do you think Deshaun Watson's going to be getting?
I feel like if he doesn't get at least half a season, I'm going to be upset. I don't know what it's actually going to be, but I think the floor has to be half a season because however much, like, didn't Hopkins get 8 games for PED use? So like
6, but yeah,
either way, yeah, right. So if it's 6, like Watson has to get more than what a slap on the wrist for PED use is. And I think that's the thing that really resonates with a lot of football fans who are upset with, the Browns just handing Watson guaranteed money after what happened. I think people have a right to be in uproar about it. And if the NFL doesn't do anything about it, I mean, that's a real problem. Obviously, I mean, with the headline, you can see it there at the bottom, like they're planning on doing something. But if it doesn't meet that bar that's relative to the punishment, like, everyone says like punishment's got to fit the crime. Yep. And sure, it's allegations at this point. Nothing's like truly been proven. But for PR's sake, for the NFL, they got to save face and they got to give him at least half a season. And that's personally my opinion. I mean, there were a lot of Browns fans jumping ship from Cleveland like this second he signed there. So I think on a holistic scale for the entirety of the NFL, you got to show that there is some sort of punishment for whether this is real or not, like the magnitude of it, even if it's false, but it was dragged out this long, like the magnitude of it, you got to respect it in that regard and give him the due time in terms of punishment.
Yeah, I mean, the punishment fits the crime is definitely, I think that's the perfect way to put it. And I feel like the NFL really struggles with that concept. And the thing that, just baffles me is, the Calvin Ridley thing too. I mean, I mean, most people are viewing him as an innocent person in this situation. He did something stupid. Granted, he deserves punishment, but I mean, he got at least a year per the NFL statement for doing something that at the end of the day, even the NFL said was harmless to the integrity of the game, to the NFL. Just nothing he did had, ill intent. And he's out here getting at least a game. DeAndre Hopkins, like you mentioned, got 6 games. If Deshaun Watson, I would say 9 games. It has to be, right?
Yeah.
But I would not be shocked if the NFL, gave him 6 or 7, something around what DeAndre Hopkins got. But there was an interesting article that I was just trying to find, but I can't find it now, of course. Apparently there was a baseball player that got like 2 years of a suspension, like not too long ago. I don't know if you saw that or not. I don't know what he did, but I mean, this guy must have done something extremely serious to get 2 years. And if the MLB could ban a player for 2 years, who's saying the NFL couldn't? I mean, if you're going to compare situations, which obviously a lot of people are doing, and rightfully so, whatever that baseball player did, I wish I brought context with me. He did something pretty bad to get 2 years. Yeah. So Deshaun Watson, he did something pretty bad. I mean, so should 2 years be off the table?
That's a lot of time, man.
Yeah.
But so is Calvin Ridley for 1 year. That's the thing. The Calvin Ridley case study makes it very interesting, because when you compare that, like you said, stupid act, disturbs the integrity of the competition, at least in theory. I don't know if it actually did, because it's not like he had insider information or anything. But yeah, when you see Calvin Ridley's getting 1 year for making a couple of bets and Deshaun Watson allegedly did the stuff that he did, I mean, the magnitude of it seems like he should get closer to a year than less than a year. So I don't know. 2 years would be wild. The thing is, too, like, if he did this stuff, yes, he deserves a 2-year suspension. But we don't know that for sure. And because we don't know it for sure, that's what's like giving me pause on it. But I think he's got to get, like I said, like, he's got to get half a season at bare minimum, but that's because of my expectations of the league. And I know the league is going to drop the ball on this, and they're going to give him, like you said, like 6, 7, 8 game suspension when he should be getting at least 9. So I think morally he should get at least a year. But when I couple that with the expectations of the league, I think it goes down to like 9 games. So I think 2 years is off the table just because of my expectations of the league.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I did finally find it. So Trevor Bauer,
nice.
The baseball player Trevor Bauer, sexual misconduct allegations. It's I don't want to say the same thing because I don't understand the full story,
right?
For either side, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, pretty much the same realm of morally awful activity, and Deshaun Watson, I would say at least a year. And I guess the better question would be, does the MLB, giving Trevor Bauer a 2-year suspension, kind of put pressure on the NFL to say, you know what, maybe we should be giving something similar to Deshaun Watson for what appears to be, at least from the outside, a similar kind of case.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. Because that's the thing. Yeah, you do have to operate with case studies. That is what law is. You operate based on what is most similar, and you study that case and you see, okay, this is a little bit different, but there's a lot of similarities here, and you piece it all together, and finally a puzzle forms and there's a full picture. And then you're like, okay, this is the answer that we're at. So I think, the Trevor Bauer case study needs to be part of this puzzle. It really should be, regardless of it not being the NFL. I mean, we've had other domestic abuse type of things in the NFL, but like I said, based on expectations, it's been pretty slim in terms of the actual punishment from that. So I'd hope that they take something from that MLB case.
Yeah, I'd like to hope so too. I mean, just to show a little bit of, hope that the morals are, standing underneath this league, that are ingrained in this foundation, because, I don't want to go on with this too long, but I mean, the whole Brian Flores lawsuit, I mean, that was just awful in itself. I mean, you got that going on. I mean, you got supposedly Calvin Ridley, gambling on games. Guys are taking PEDs and stuff left and right. I mean, there is so much what appears to be corruption. There was the Mark Gruden stuff that went on too. I mean, there was just so much that happened over this past season alone that just really puts the NFL's moral compass, under a spotlight, to be honest. And just because of the powerful, company and entertainment source this is, it kind of gets swept under the rug. But I made a video about it just a month or two ago. I think it was right after the Calvin Ridley suspension happened. It's like there was so much that has happened this year, and people just, they talk about it individually, and we, get upset about it as individual situations, but we don't really look at the broader picture and realize, like, this league has a lot of screwed up shit that goes on a relatively often basis.
But that news cycle, you got to keep it moving. And once the next thing comes up, you forget about the last one. And that's kind of the problem. But I agree, on a macro scale, when you look at all of it grouped together, yeah, it's a lot worse than just, oh yeah, this happened. Oh wait, okay, forget about that. Oh, now this happened. And it's just, you got to keep it moving with the news cycle. That's just how it goes.
Yep, absolutely. And Kim says it best. The reality is that the NFL has to do something that shows that they're doing the right thing. And
Yes.
they're going to have to. And I really wonder if that Trevor Bauer situation is going to play into this. It really does make me wonder. We'll never know, but it does make you think. So anyway, let's move on from the recent news. We're going to go into the Q&A, and I have a couple questions that I really am looking forward to ask you. And this first one especially, right here. What will James Cook's workload be maximized at in year one?
Talking like snap share, is that the answer that you're looking for?
Yeah, snap share would be good.
I feel like it's going to be something like 35 to 40%. I still think I gotta figure this out, because I think Moss will still be involved to an extent. 30-30. That doesn't leave enough for Singletary.
So you still have Moss on the roster?
Oh, I still think that's going to bleed into my hot take. I think 30 to 40%. That's a big window, but I can't commit to much because obviously we don't know exactly how he's going to be used. But I think 30 to 40% is where I feel comfortable taking my best guess on that, because I think he's going to be utilized as a receiver in the slot. He's going to be utilized as a matchup threat in the backfield. They're going to try to use him as a weapon, but he's not necessarily going to take Singletary off the field on obvious rushing downs. He still has some areas to work in between the tackles and as a pass blocker, things like that. So he's got to prove that first. And we also know Sean McDermott, he really eases his rookies in. They got to impress early. I was surprised Groot got as much run as he did last year. He clearly impressed early in training camp, OTAs, all of that stuff. So if Cook does that, I think he could get to the 40 end of the spectrum, but I think it's probably going to be closer to 30% snap share this year.
Yeah, I'm completely on that train as well. I feel like there's a big portion of Bills Mafia that thinks that, James Cook is going to come in and completely boot Zach Moss, Duke Johnson, even Devin Singletary right out of here, and he's going to be the RB1. He's going to be taking over snaps. He's going to be the every down back. It's just like that's not what this is here. I mean, right. I think, didn't they say it themselves? Like James Cook was the J.D. McKissic replacement. Am I crazy? Didn't they say something like that?
Bean said something in the same vein as that, where he was like, yeah, we tried to get a guy similar to that. And J.D. McKissic, obviously, we know what happened with that. I'm speaking kind of not verbatim, but paraphrasing. And then, and then he went on to talk about how Cook has a similar skill set. So, yeah, I think he's going to be a change of pace back. He's going to be a third down running back. He's going to be a scat back. He's not going to be someone who's going to be the bell cow. That's not his skill set. Could he be the bell cow moving forward? Sure, but he's going to have to put on weight. He's going to have to keep speed while putting on that weight. There's a lot of variables. I think he's a back that is destined to have a career in a rotation. I think he would serve best being part of a rotation in a backfield. That's not saying he has to be 1B in that rotation for his entire career. I think he has potential to be 1A in a rotation, but I think it would benefit the longevity of his career and the skill set that he currently possesses to be part of a rotation, to have his skill set complemented by someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw, we've seen over the last couple of years, Sean McDermott, Brian Dable and his offense. They weren't big fans of, one guy in that backfield getting every snap, getting every touch. That's just not how this offense runs.
Yep.
And it's taken Devin Singletary, I think he's, going into his fourth season now, if I'm not wrong. It's taken him a while to really start to dominate the early downs. I mean, he finally kind of inched Zach Moss out of the picture, but even still, it's taken him quite a long time to even get that role. So for everybody to think that James Cook is going to just kind of step in and become that next between the tackles, every down guy, he's going to be looking like his brother Dalvin. I mean, it's just not realistic. And I think people need to kind of temper their expectations when it comes to this running back. But I do think he's going to offer a different dimension to this team that he didn't have in the past. And that's the most important part.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. I think, sure, he has the potential where he could be Dalvin Cook, but I'm up for that. That's not for anyone. That's like 2005 Buffalo Bills type stuff. Yeah, no, this is the year. Then you miss the playoffs again. You don't want to do that. Like, keep your expectations moderate to realistic in that range, and then be pleasantly surprised when he outperforms it. That's my philosophy usually with players.
Absolutely. I mean, I've kind of started to adopt that philosophy going into this year after we lost to the Kansas City Chiefs 2 years ago, not last year, but I was like, we're expecting some big things this year, but I'd rather be, surprised than, disappointed at the end.
Exactly.
Of it. Like,
exactly.
Everybody's thinking, oh, now this is the year we're going to the Super Bowl, or now this is the year that, we're really going to get our best shot. But it's like, you can't expect these high expectations, because then you're only going to be setting yourself up for failure.
That's what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be like, yeah, this is Super Bowl. Like, they should have that mindset, that confidence. But as a fan base, like someone just watching with no impact on the game, we got to manage our expectations just for emotion's sake.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, my second question for you is going to be, and this one I saw something on Twitter that sparked this in my mind. Is Travis Kelce, considering he's a tight end amongst wide receivers, a top 5 pass catcher in the NFL? And I'm going to pull up the stat that made me think this.
Most receiving yards in the NFL last 6 seasons.
I was astonished when I saw this.
I mean, it's fair though. Like, I think he's going to be used more like a receiver than he ever has been now that Tyreek Hill is gone, and they brought in more like physical power slot type of wide receivers, some big slot guys that can block, but also do some stuff in the short to intermediate area. I don't know, top 5 pass catcher. So we got Diggs, Hill, Devontae Adams,
Justin Jefferson, probably, right? I'm putting JJ.
Justin Jefferson's great, but is he better than Kelce
as
a pass? Like, sure, he could be in the top 5, but who's better than Kelce? Like, those are the 3, and even Diggs. Like, I think, I'm a homer, like, at heart. Like, I'm a homer, but there's an argument to be had that Travis Kelce is a better pass catcher in terms of what he's bringing to the table than Stephon Diggs. It's different. It's different than how Stephon Diggs does it, but there's an argument for it.
I
feel like the answer is yes. This is wild, but I think the answer is yes. I'm struggling to think of other wide receivers that would go ahead of him. And I really don't think that there are 5 that would push him to the 6th spot.
Does this single season by Kupp keep him solidified in the top 5?
I think it does. I think Kupp could get in the top 5 because he's also shown, like that last season was crazy, absolute breakout season, but he's shown it his entire career, just not to that extent. So I think that pushes him into the top 5. But does that make him 4? Does that make him 5? Is there another wide receiver you have in your head? Because I feel like I'm struggling here. Like, I'm not putting Debo top 5.
No, I'm not putting Debo top 10, but that's a conversation for a whole other day. I mean, my top 5 strictly wide receivers are probably like Devontae Adams. I think Justin Jefferson's up there. I really do.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
I got fair. JJ. I can't think off the top of my head. Tyreek is in there. Kupp, and then 5 is. I probably do have Diggs in there, strictly wide receiver. But I mean, like you said, you can't bash the idea of Kelce over Diggs. You can't.
It's fair. You could. I think, with the exception of Devontae Adams and probably Tyreek Hill, just because of like how just generational his talent is and how unique his talent is. I think those are the 2 that just without question, they cannot be compared to being worse or equal to Kelce as a pass catcher. But then everyone other than that, they're all under the spotlight. They're all like under the microscope in terms of comparing them. Are they top 5? Are they not? I think Kelce is as good, if not better, than anyone other than those 2 that I mentioned. So yeah, that's really interesting. It's funny how DeAndre Hopkins has also fallen off the table with, everything that happened in the past year in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, once you brought up D-Hop, I was thinking about it in the back of my mind, but it's like, the ability to stay on the field, I think, is a fair factorial when talking about, where players rank in terms of, their counterparts.
Yeah.
And, DeAndre Hopkins, although his talent level is still, I think, top of the game, top of the league, it just, if you're not out there to prove that production, I guess, the production part is part of it. And if he's not out there, it's a shame that he really hasn't been between the injury and now the suspension.
Yeah.
But, I also feel like he hasn't been himself not himself, but I feel like he hasn't been as impactful for the Arizona Cardinals like he was for Houston, at least.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I don't blame him because I think it's a Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray issue. I think Deshaun Watson was just, obviously a much better quarterback. I think what they had going between the two is a lot more lethal. But in terms of talent, I think DeAndre Hopkins is still up there. But now, it's kind of hard to put him in there. What about Michael Thomas?
Michael Thomas is a tough case study too, because of what happened with his ankle and everything in terms of how he's been managed medically. So, I mean, if you're talking about what he was 2 years ago versus who Travis Kelce is now, I think you could put Thomas in the top 5, but I mean, it's tough to really stand on two legs and say, Michael Thomas he's top 5 wide receiver in the league. What are we going off of, man? Recency bias is a real thing, but there is some validity to the recency of everything. And which goes on to my next one. You bring up Justin Jefferson. Is it too early to talk about Jamar Chase as top 5?
I would say yes.
I think so too, but I wanted to know.
Yeah, after Justin Jefferson's first year when he took the league by storm, people were catapulting this guy top 5, top 10. Right. I'm like, I hate it. I hate when people do that. One good year to me is not enough. There are guys, we have seen guys time and time again have one great season. And it's fine to want to put them, in the higher echelon of, players in their own position, but to put them above guys that have such larger bodies of work that have been doing something at a high level consistently, to just catapult these rookies into these categories with guys that are just so established. I find it so disrespectful. So after Justin Jefferson's first year, I was like, I'm shooting down that conversation every chance I get.
Just wait, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the thing with Jamar Chase is I feel like he had an impact on the Bengals that we haven't really seen for a singular wide receiver in a long time. I mean, I will stand on my high ground and claim that the Bengals don't touch the postseason without Jamar Chase, let alone go to the Super Bowl. He was that good for them. I thought he really made that much of an impact. So I won't say he's top 5, but I'm comfortable putting him top 10, where I wasn't with Justin Jefferson after his rookie season.
That's fair. Yeah, final answer. I think Travis Kelce is a top 5 pass catcher in the NFL.
Wow. That's a conversation that I feel like a lot of people would go back and forth with, especially Bills fans, because it's Diggs that's going to be on the bubble.
Yeah, exactly. It hits the heart.
All right, so that was my second Q&A question, and we kind of alluded this a little bit in that conversation, but the third is, should the ability to remain healthy heavily factor into ranking a player properly?
I think heavily is too strong of a word, but it definitely should be part of it. Because like I said, I mean, it's a different story when you're talking about Michael Thomas 2 years ago versus Michael Thomas now. And we all know what Michael Thomas was, and maybe he was propped up a little bit by Drew Brees. Who knows? But either way, that's a great player. And it could have been mismanagement, not on his behalf, but on the team's medical staff. So you can't really blame him too much. But ultimately, if he's not healthy, how are you going to assess this guy? Because you have to assess him relative to his peers. And if you don't get that opportunity, you're just missing out on the evaluation. So I think it's a critical piece of the puzzle, but you can't overly knock someone. So when I'm talking about wide receiver talent in the league, I think you put Michael Thomas in that top 10, but it's with a heavy asterisk, if that makes sense. It's not like, oh, he's solidified top 10. It's he's in the top 10, but I also need him to prove it this year because I haven't seen him at what we know him to be for 2 years now. So I think Michael Thomas is a good case study with that. I think Julio Jones is a good case study with that. AJ Brown is an interesting one because he's great, but he struggles to stay healthy for an entire season. So I think injuries are definitely a factor when it comes to ranking a player. It has to be part of it. Saying a player is injury prone and then just knocking him down a few pegs, I don't love the idea of that, But if you can't stay on the field, you can't get a proper evaluation. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, it's just so hard. And a player that polarizes me in this conversation specifically is Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he is like one of the most well-rounded running backs that we have, probably the most well-rounded running back in the game today. But his inability to stay on the field kills him, just absolutely kills him. And it's like, I'm sitting here trying to have a conversation with somebody and tell them that I think Christian McCaffrey does still deserve to be in a top 2 conversation in the NFL. But it's just so hard because he can't stay on the field.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that, the big conversation over the last couple of years now has been Christian McCaffrey or Derrick Henry. I'm a Christian McCaffrey person because I feel like a player that can impact the game in more ways than one is more valuable to a team than a guy like Derrick Henry, who's pretty one-dimensional, I would argue. So that's why I would have Christian McCaffrey over Derrick Henry. But with that in mind, I just think I still have a very hard time letting go of that piece of McCaffrey being at the top. So it just makes me think, and ask this question because of McCaffrey.
Yeah, that makes it tough. McCaffrey is tough because where he was literally top 2, like most generational player in the league too. Like that's the other thing. It's not just specific to the running back position before he got injured. It was like he was this up and coming, like he could be the face of the league type of thing. And obviously, the shelf life with running back, it is short lived and all that stuff, but it makes it particularly tough because of how high he was in those rankings for whatever person you ask. Like consensus, people were like, this is a top 2 running back. This is a top 5 player in the league, all that stuff. The buzz around him was hot. And obviously, with those injuries, it makes it really, really hard to make your case because you can't evaluate him relative to his peers because those peers are passing him by. I think Rashad Penny is another guy like that, just someone who just struggled to stay healthy a lot. People thought that the Seahawks reached for him in the first round, and they did, and he couldn't stay healthy. And then he gets healthy and he balls out the last 8 weeks of the season. So it's just impossible to evaluate someone if they're injured. You can't properly do it. So it's part of the puzzle, man.
It is. It's the unfortunate piece of the puzzle. And, funny enough, we were talking about James Cook, but I would argue that, if Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey are equally able to stay healthy like some of these other younger guys have been able to, I think they're the top 2 running backs in the NFL. And, I mean, their talent level, I think, is so far and above. I love Derrick Henry. I think he is just a freak of nature, but I'm taking Christian McCaffrey, and I probably would say Dalvin Cook, too, over Derrick Henry and JT. For that matter. And those guys are tremendous.
The JT one is spicy to me.
It's very spicy, but there's something about Dalvin Cook. He's so elusive. He's so strong. I feel like he hits a whole lot faster than, Derrick Henry. He's huge for his size, but I feel like his ability to fight through contact consistently, it's great in individual games, but I would take, a guy like Christian McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook who can avoid that contact and be able to be utilized out of the backfield a little bit more than Derrick Henry or even Jonathan Taylor. But that's just where I'm at with that, because running back specifically, because they all kind of go through the same cycle of domination and then they end up getting hurt. So they all kind of are in the same niche. Almost.
It's an unfortunate truth.
It really is. And that's why running back in round 1 was probably the worst trend going in Bills Mafia. But
always is.
Oh, God, that conversation hurts my head every year. All right, so the next segment, which is the segment I added, this is nothing original. I'm not any whiz genius, but it's going to be a fun one regardless. This is a would you rather segment. So basically, I'm going to take a player, and I'm going to put 5 other players up against them, and you got to tell me who you think is better. Pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to start with, actually, the player that we're using to compare. This is going to be the Gabe Davis edition.
Ooh, okay.
So this is going to be an interesting one.
This is going to be interesting. I don't want to get
Gabe Davis. Would you take Gabe Davis or Brandon Ayuk?
Gabe Davis. I think what Kyle Shanahan has been doing to Brandon Ayuk and not letting him play, he's around him the most. He knows him the most. I think it's telling of. I mean, I don't want to extrapolate this far, but it seems telling of his work ethic, his drive, what he's doing in practice, stuff like that. Like you see flashes of Brandon Ayuk and it is sick. But what we know about Gabe Davis is this guy's a gamer and he's never going to quit his self-improvement. So I got to take Gabe Davis on this one, but that's a good one. I'm excited for the rest of these now.
Oh, it only gets harder. So Gabe Davis or Marquise Brown.
Oh God, that's speed.
Yeah.
Are we talking on the Bills with all of the like for future ones when it's like Tyreek Hill, or like am I extrapolating from the Dolphins in that scenario?
We're gonna say the last so to give more context, the last we've seen that player, and we're not talking like how they fit with the Bills or any specific team, just that individual player.
The player. Okay. Oh man, I'm taking Gabe for versatility. For versatility, he can do more than Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown opens more options for you because of the speed, but Gabe is just so versatile in the fact that he can get deep, not as well as Marquise Brown, can work the intermediate with his physicality, and he can also block. There's a lot that you can do with Gabe Davis that you can't do with Marquise Brown. Like, it goes both ways. That was harder than Brandon Ayuk, but I'm going with Gabe Davis.
All right, so we have Gabe Davis is up 2-0 right now. Let's see if there could be a reverse sweep. Number 3, Gabe Davis or Robert Woods. This is a Homer Hart one.
Yeah, I think I gotta go with Robert Woods on this one. I think the main thing with this is that he does all the things that Gabe Davis does, and it's more proven. I suppose, like, if Gabe Davis is like 2 years down the road and you ask me this question, and he's still on the trajectory that he's on, like, I'm picking Gabe Davis. But I think the big thing with this is age. That's the one that makes this one really tough, because you kind of already know what Robert Woods is, and you don't know exactly what Gabe Davis could become. Has he hit his ceiling already, or does he still have room to grow? And that's kind of the question. I think he still has room to grow, but that consistency from Robert Woods, dude knows how to get open, dude knows how to block, he is physical, he does everything the right way. I think I'm taking Robert Woods on this one, which is really tough. Yeah, that was a heartstrings one.
Yeah, it was. And Robert Woods is a guy that he, like you said, I feel like he almost fits the way the Rams run their offense. Robert Woods was so perfect for that offensive scheme. Sean McVay set him up to be so successful, and I'm so glad that he had the opportunity to play with in that offense, because I really think it brought the best out of him, and it really did show a lot of the NFL that this guy is one of the better wide receiver 2 options in the NFL. And I mean, arguably, if you stuck him on an offense that might not be so pass heavy, he probably could be a wide receiver 1-2 in the right scenario. Maybe not at this point, because he's getting up there in age, I think. But Robert Woods is one of the better wide receivers that does not get talked about enough.
Sure.
This is another tough one, I think. I was having such a hard time with this earlier. I really don't know all of these guys, but Gabe Davis or Chase Claypool?
Oh boy. I think the thing that I keep coming back to with these Gabe Davis ones is the work ethic and everything we've learned about it. And it's not like Chase Claypool doesn't work, but we know his presence on TikTok and all the socials and all that stuff. And that's always going to come up when you talk about Juju, when you talk about Claypool. That's just natural. It always comes up with those guys. And for whatever reason, I'm going off the field with this one, and I'm picking Gabe Davis because of what I know he's doing when he's not on the field. I just think he's incredibly dialed into being a professional. And I don't want to say that to slight at Claypool or anything like that. Like Claypool, I think Claypool's ceiling is higher than Gabe Davis, but will he reach it? I have more confidence in Gabe Davis reaching his ceiling than Claypool reaching his. And if Claypool reaches 80% of his ceiling, is that larger than Gabe Davis's 100% ceiling? So I think that's why I'm going Gabe Davis on this.
Fair enough. Something about Claypool, man. You make a great point. The off the field stuff that you absolutely have to worry about. If we were talking like Bills aspect, like if we brought Chase Claypool to the Bills, I think that's something that we probably could take, at least in my opinion, out of the picture, just because of the culture, the way things are ran around here.
Yeah.
I think he's straightened out rather quick. But you make a great point. Like individually, Chase Claypool is a guy that brings a distraction to a locker room, and if that locker room's not stable, then Chase Claypool might not be that type of player that you're expecting him to be, especially in comparison to a guy like Gabe Davis, who has a ceiling that, like you mentioned, probably isn't as high, but certainly is up there. But this last one, I don't know. I honestly couldn't come up with an answer myself for any of these, so I'm gonna let you do it. Gabe Davis or Tyler Boyd?
I really like Tyler Boyd. Oh, I've always had like a soft spot for Tyler Boyd. The way he worked into his role in Cincinnati and finally got his shine, and he's just become one of the better slot receivers in the league. This is tough because he's a similar guy to like Robert Woods in the way where he could do a lot of everything. He's not going to be that downfield deep threat, but it's something he can do it like in a pinch. I think the youth gives it to Gabe Davis. I think Tyler Boyd is what he is at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Gabe Davis is really close to what Tyler Boyd currently is. Really close is probably too strong. He's close to what Tyler Boyd currently is, but I have confidence that his growth will surpass what Tyler Boyd is right now. So I'm going Gabe Davis on this one.
All right. I think Gabe Davis won 4 out of 5, I believe. Gabe Davis.
Yeah, he did. Gabe, the way Bill's embedded in all of that stuff has been highlighting Gabe Davis this offseason. It's really hard to not root for that guy.
I know it is. And that's why I have a very hard time personally for the same kind of reason judging Gabe Davis, just because, he is a Bills player, the way he impacted the AFC Championship game. I mean, not only that, but he's, shown such strong flashes, kind of, randomly, I guess is the better word to use. Like just, come and go. He's making impact here and there. And especially down the stretch of last season was where he finally put together consistent bodies of work across the game-to-game paces. But it's like, am I looking at him and just seeing so much potential because I'm a Bills fan?
Right.
Or am I, not being by, I don't know. I feel like there's a weird cloud around Gabe Davis.
Yeah.
Everyone loves him. All Bills fans love him. We all want him to be successful. And we all see what we have in him. But I also don't know if we're, kind of judging him to, propping him up too high, I guess.
Yeah. The bias definitely comes in. Those Homer goggles are tough to take off.
Oh, yeah. And, I also want to ask, would T. Higgins over Tyler Boyd made this a tougher question?
Yes, I would have gone with T. Higgins. And the thing is, too, like, T. Higgins has limitations that Gabe Davis does not have. But I have a soft spot for T. Higgins even more than I do Tyler Boyd. And then there's also the age thing. Like, they're the same age. So it's like there's still room to grow for both of them. So I think I would have gone T. Higgins if you had put him as the would you rather.
Yeah, that one I felt like I feel like that was more unanimous. I feel like I did ask a few people about T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd, and it seemed like T. Higgins was definitely the easier choice between him and Tyler Boyd. So that's why I went with Boyd. All right, so that was a fun new segment.
Yeah, I like that. You should definitely continue that. Would you rather is fun.
All right, I'll definitely continue it. Thank you. All right, so we have the second to last segment, and that is the hot take. If you want to, do you want to kick off your hot take?
Yeah, I'll go. I'll go for it. Yeah, I alluded to it a little bit. No, firstly, of course, Bills winning the Super Bowl. That's my hot take. No, no, my hot take is that I've said this before. I said it 2 weeks ago, I think, on my first Madden cast. I said, I think James Cook is going to be a sneaky good thing for Zach Moss. I think right off the bat, people were like, oh, James Cook got drafted. Zach Moss, trade him. He's gone. We're done with him. I don't think that's what happens. I think what James Cook does is he kicks someone like Duke Johnson off the roster because that's a redundancy in that skill set. Right. What I think drafting James Cook does for Zach Moss is it allows Moss to live in his niche. It allows him to live in that niche of being the power short yardage back instead of being this, rotational 3 down, I don't want to say workhorse, but someone that can do a little bit of everything. Now he can do a little bit of everything, but he's not being relied on in that way. He can live in that niche, know what his role is, and be a true role player in that running back room. And I think it will truly be good for him this year. And that's why it was so tough when I was answering the question, what is James Cook's snap share going to be like this year? Because I was trying to factor in like, okay, maybe what are we doing? 15 to 20-ish% Moss. And then we got 30 to 35-ish Cook. And then whatever the rest is with the math, that's like 50, 55 or something like that for Singletary. And I think that's ballpark how it's going to play out because I think they all serve a role that is niche to them, where Singletary can do a little bit of everything. You can do anything you ask of him, not necessarily one thing great, but he can do them all. He'll do whatever you ask of him, and he can do it at a sufficient level, and that's great. You want that kind of well-roundedness. And then you got the specific receiving ability from James Cook, and then you got the short yardage bruiser, the guy that's just going to be physical, you know, the proverbial make business decisions, all that stuff that he's tried to make a real case for. But I've been standing for Zach Moss for way too long. My corpse is dead on the Zach Moss hill. I still believe he has a chance. I think people just omit what he did in year one as a rookie and totally forget about it because of what happened this past year and how little he could even get dressed for game day. I think injuries had a big impact on how much he was dressing on game days, how active he was in practices, how not even active, but efficient he was in practices, because he might not have been like showing up on the injury report, but he was still slightly nicked up. So I think getting James Cook is good for Zach Moss because it allows him to live in his niche and find a role in this backfield.
That's a very good one. I was one of those people. James Cook brought in. Zach Moss is going to be the one.
Get him out of here.
The way out. Funny enough, everything you talked about, the people that talk about Zach Moss in a negative light, I am that person. Like 10 out of 10 times. Like, I'm a Devin Singletary backer. I've been, Devin Singletary, RB1, forget Zach Moss, blah, blah, blah. Like, I've been that person. To be fair, I have not. I've kind of closed out the good part of Zach Moss because
that's what you do. Like I do it with players all the time. It's natural.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because he is a Bills player. I don't want to dislike him, and I don't dislike him. It's just I feel like at least when I was talking about between Devin and Zach, I thought Devin was just the much more well-rounded, the better player for the offense over Zach Moss. And there were low lights that Zach Moss had where I was like, you know what, God, man, just get him off,
Yeah, no, and it's fair. He's had some bad plays, and the thing is, you're not wrong. Like Singletary is the better back. It's objectively true at this point that Singletary is the better back, but that doesn't mean Zach Moss is trash. And I think that's the thing that I'm trying to push. That look, just because he's been pushed out of RB1 role does not mean he doesn't have a spot in this running back room. And there's still value that you can squeeze out of a rookie running back deal. And you want to squeeze as much value out of a rookie running back deal as you can, because the Bills don't look like they're going to be re-signing any running backs off of their rookie deal.
Yeah. And that's a fair point. And, I guess the question now pops into my mind because, I have a very love-hate relationship with Brian Daboll. There were, at points where I loved the guy and I thought he was a creative genius that could really be an innovative football mind in this game. Yeah. But then there were other weeks where I'm like, how is this guy employed? Why is he here? I went through these mood swings with Brian Daboll. Do you think, because I do feel like at points the run game was predictable, the play calling was predictable coming from Brian Daboll. Do you think, in cases where Zach Moss was a victim of that, it played in negatively to, what he brought to the table? Because I feel like, Zach Moss was being brought out on the field and you knew what was going to happen. You knew the situation we were finding Zach Moss in. Do you think he didn't have a chance to be more impactful because he was so strapped into one role?
That's a great question. Yeah, no, I understand where you're going with that. I think here's how I'm going to answer this. I think there were moments of that, but what I want to say is there are moments of that with every offensive coordinator. You're never going to find that perfect balance of, oh, this player, like we know exactly how we're going to utilize him and we're going to make sure we utilize him in this way and that way. That way we mask our tendencies on the back end and no one can know what we're doing when this guy is on the field. That's a perfect world. And you strive for that, but no one's getting there. So I think it happened and that's absolutely fair. But I do think maybe the tendency of Josh Allen running so much in short yardage played against him and things like that. And I think another thing that people forget, like Zach Moss has actually been pretty effective as a pass catcher, which people just kind of forget because, they forget the good stuff. And it's like, cool, he caught a check down. Like, who cares? Honestly, you shouldn't really care all that much because it's not all that flashy, but Singletary hasn't been all that great catching out of the backfield in his career. So you got to take the small victory. So I think it's fair to say that he was misutilized to an extent, but I don't think that's been the demise of Zach Moss's career to this point. I think it's more how the injuries have derailed him, because you think about that Colts playoff game in 2020 and he was rocking and rolling. He was RB1A at that time. And once that injury hit, nothing's been the same. Nothing has been the same to that point. And I mean, I don't know about you, but do you remember the Pittsburgh Steelers game? I think it was 2020 when we had the ball with like 5 minutes left and we just ran Zach Moss into the ground for the last 5 minutes of the game, and he kept churning first down after first down after first down. That's what you want out of a running back. Someone that's going to bleed that clock out, someone that's going to put the pain into a defense in those final moments of the fourth quarter when they're all tired and they're struggling to make plays. He's more difficult to tackle than Singletary in that way, but it's different. And you talked about it earlier, how you prefer like a McCaffrey or a Cook to a Derrick Henry. I'm in the other vein of it. Running backs are really weird with that. Everyone has their flavor of running back. And I always prefer the well-rounded guy that leans towards power versus the well-rounded guy that leans towards elusiveness. I don't know why. I don't think one's better than the other, but that's just where I lean. And it gets me in trouble every single year. Everyone was on me about me having Isaiah Spiller as RB1 because he ran like a 4.640. And I was like, I don't care. He's balanced.
I saw a couple people saying, and you probably were one of them, Isaiah Spiller wasn't the top of people's boards for running backs. And that was something I didn't see tremendously often, but it was something I was seeing often enough to where I was like, someone like myself who's not a big draft guy, I was like, okay, this is something that I should be prepared for if our pick comes around, round 3, later round 4, whatever choice we had. This is something that I should be ready for and somebody that should be on our radar. So that's a very fair point. Isaiah Spiller was one of those guys that fits that description that you were describing to a T, to be honest. So anyway, so that was your hot take. I'm not going to kill this hot take because I didn't make a whole video about it, but I think Sean McVay is not heavily, but I do think he's overrated. Where would you rank Sean McVay amongst head coaches in the NFL?
Head coaches in the NFL. It's really tough for me because I still have like Bill Belichick just like up on this pedestal. It's like he hasn't been all that great recently, but like he's still Bill Belichick. Let's see, McDermott, McVay, Belichick. Tomlin's up there despite what people want to say about Tomlin. Now I'm not putting Arians up there. LaFleur has been pretty good. I think he's overrated by national media, but I still think he's top 5. Like that's the thing. He's definitely overrated. We're like, oh, look at this guy on Chunky Campbell's commercials, and like he's the best coach in the league. He's this young gun who just knows everything. Kyle Shanahan's another one that just popped in my head. But I still think he's top 5. I think he's got a good mind. And think about everything that he got out of Jared Goff. Like, I mean, he's made a lot with less. And I think that's what's exciting. Obviously, it took him getting Matthew Stafford to finally get over that hump. But either way, I still think he's a bright young mind in the league. And I think for that reason, he gets overrated just the same ways that Justin Jefferson argument that we were talking about earlier. Young guy shows flashes potential and everyone's like, oh, look at this shiny new toy. Joe Burrow right now, like just had a massive breakout year in year 2. And everyone's like, oh, Bengals going to the Super Bowl. Like they're the best team in the AFC because they made the AFC championship, like things like that. So it's natural to overrate people in that way, but you have to bring it back to reality and show some context, not just say, oh, he's young and he's got potential, so let's rank him higher than someone who we already know, which is funny, is something I was doing a lot in the Would You Rather. But either way, I do think Sean McVay is still a top 5 guy, but I agree that he is overrated by national pundits.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, top 5. So I didn't just pull this out of my ass. I did a little bit of sample sizing based on who, my outreach was. And I, not really to my surprise, this was what I was kind of shooting for. People were saying top 3, a lot of top 3 answers I was getting. And that was like kind of where I was ready to pull the trigger and, make this statement, right?
Yeah.
Top 3 in my mind, you're then putting him above guys like, potentially Bill Belichick if you're not going to include him in there. I think I think it goes Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, and I'm not going to be able to remember his name off the top. Andy Reid.
Andy Reid. I never even thought of Andy Reid.
It's like there are guys with, kind of going back to the player conversation, like you mentioned, with these bodies of work that are so consistent that you just can't, and Sean McVay's been doing it for, not 1, 2, or 3 years, but, still not long enough in the context of a head coach. And you got Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, Andy Reid. I think John Harbaugh's a top 5 head coach. I think you put him in there. And I think I had Matt LaFleur 5, McDermott 6, and then McVay 7. That was my list.
I think that's fair. And that's the point. Like, sure. And that's really drives home the fact that he is overrated, because all of those guys, you can make an argument for being better than McVay because of body of work. I think LaFleur is probably the one guy where you're thinking body of work. Probably not yet, because he's only had like 3 or 4 years as a head coach and mostly offensive coordinator work, I believe. But either way, like, he's been successful since he's got the head coaching gig, and that's the same vein as Sean McVay. So maybe in my mind, those are 2 guys that are like neck and neck. And even McDermott, like, falls in the same area where they all got the gig around the same time, where they're showing success since they got their job. But where's the longevity? Because you got it in coaching specifically. I think you really have to put a lot of emphasis on longevity and sustainable success, which is obviously something that Harbaugh, Belichick, Tomlin, and Andy Reid all have. So that would put McVay, LaFleur, and McDermott all tied for 5th in that similar vein of they've all had relative success since they've got their gig, but it's been a short-lived span.
Definitely. And, to me, what got me really thinking about the show, I had this thought come into my mind when we were all watching, Super Bowl between the Rams and the Bengals, and Mr. Sean McVay decided to run. I mean, I can't tell you how many run plays he wasted. I mean, I have the whole thing right here, but I don't want to get into it. He just first down runs, second and long runs. It's like he was trying so hard to establish the ground game time and time again. He was restricting his offense. And I'm sitting there thinking, what in God's name is this offensive, innovative genius thinking?
Yeah.
And it was really driving me nuts because I wanted the Rams to win desperately. And I'm sitting there watching Sean McVay shoot his own offense in the foot. I mean, I think they averaged, I think it was like 1.9 yards per carry in that game. And I mean, there was not a single point where they were having success on the ground, yet he continued to give the ball to a running back over and over. It's like somebody that's supposed to be so innovative and he's supposed to be able to make adjustments on the fly. He's so smart. It's like you would think in the biggest game of his career, I thought he was not necessarily outcoached because Zach Taylor did not have a great game either, but he didn't look as good, under the spotlight that I, would have liked to think he could have been. And that's going back a couple years ago too. I mean, we saw him against Bill Belichick in the Patriots. I mean, they were the first or second best offense in football. They put up 3 points in the Super Bowl. I give Bill Belichick one of the smartest defensive minds ever, if not the smartest, but you are the top offense in football. Your defense did their job. They held Tom Brady to 13 points. You're telling me they couldn't put up at least 10 to tie the game? I mean, there were games over, I mean, I have the whole thing. I could go on. This whole thing I've manifested, and I feel like Sean McVay being put into a top 3 conversation especially is just completely ridiculous.
I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. I definitely can vibe with the body of work and then also doing it when it counts. I think that is a very fair argument.
All right. So enough of that babbling. We're going to go into the most anticipated part of the show. We're going to start with the Caveman's Quiz Game. If you guys are new around here or you don't know exactly how it works, the Caveman's Quiz Game is relatively simple. There's 5 NFL quiz questions. Question categories include recent events, stats, history, draft, and football IQ. You can choose an easy, medium, hard for each question. Easy is 10, maybe 20 points. Hard is 30 points, 15 seconds per question. But I'm pretty lenient about that. And you are fighting to be etched on the leaderboards, which is being held by Hansel at the moment with 70 points. Are you ready?
I believe so.
All right. So we're going to kick it off. We have the first being the recent events. This is more like I changed the title, at least in my personal notes. I just haven't changed it here to like off-season events because nothing really is happening at the moment. So with that in mind, would you like the easy, the medium, or the hard off-season events question?
I'm going to go with medium.
Medium. All right.
Pulse for it.
First question, medium. Who did the Vikings hire as their next head coach?
Jesus. I don't even know. I want to say Callahan's his name, but I don't think that's right. I think that's their offensive line coach. I don't have it. Who is it?
It's Kevin O'Connell, the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams.
I feel like Callahan was like kind of close to O'Connell in a sense.
It was pretty close.
Just from namesake. Oh, that sucks. All right, starting off slow.
That's all right. You still have the opportunity to bounce back. So that was the first question. The second is going to be a statistical question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard for this one?
Let's go with the easy. Let's get some points on the board.
All right. Who led the NFL in interceptions last season?
If it wasn't Trayvon Diggs, I'm going to be upset. Okay, good.
I would do you that dirty.
No, but like, you never know. Like, Trayvon Diggs was talked about like this stud. All of a sudden, he gets all the ball skills, all that stuff. And then next thing you know, he's like second on the leaderboard for INTs. Like, it wouldn't.
I couldn't do that too. That would be so cruel for an easy question to do a trick, something like that. But yes, it was Trayvon Diggs. You're on the board with 10. There we go. Not bad. So we're going to be starting with this is the history question. I don't even know my own game. Would you like the easy, the medium, or the hard for the history?
Oh, man. I'm not great with history. I feel like I have to go easy, but I need points. I'm going easy either way. I need points.
Right.
I need points.
All right. So the easy history question is, who won Defensive Rookie of the Year last season?
Micah Parsons.
20 points on the board. You're giving yourself a chance, and that is what is important.
I need the fighting chance.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. All right. Fourth question. This is a draft question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard draft question?
I feel like this is the one I need to take the hard for.
All right. You want to take the hard?
Yep.
All right. Here's your chance. How many trades happened in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft?
So many trades. All right. 11.
It was 9.
No.
9.
No, it's so close.
I gotta get the whole. I don't have the whole list with me, but
there were so many trades. There were so many trades. I don't know why I thought it was double digits. I really thought it was double digits, though.
It was 9. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I did triple, quadruple.
Right. Yeah.
Check this question because I can't be wrong, but it was 9 indeed. You were close though. You were very close. All right. So for the final question, you want to give it the hard shot? Do you want to just give yourself a chance? Do you want to go medium or easy for this is
where would a medium question put me on the leaderboards if I got it right? I think that's like I'm currently like the caboose right now.
You are currently the caboose. The medium question would put you at 40, tied for 5th, I believe. I can check. Let me double check that for you real quick. I think that puts you tied for. Oh, actually tied for 4th and 5th. Z-Bot got 40 as well as Robin. They're both got so tied for 4th technically.
Oh man.
50 puts you in 3rd.
No, there's no way I get the hard. What's the category for this one?
This is a football IQ question. This isn't like, I don't know. It's not.
I got it. I'm going hard. You know what? Just throw it all in. All the chips.
All right. The hard question is, what is the highest possible passer rating for an NFL quarterback?
I'm struggling on the decimal. I think it's 138. It's 138.6 or 138.8. I'm going 138.6.
It's 158.3.
158. No.
It is 158.3 is the highest possible passer rating. You gave it your best shot at the end, though. You took the hard question. Not many people take the hard questions, so I give you a lot of credit for giving yourself a chance.
Once I got that first question wrong, I knew I was behind the 8 ball, And I was like, all right, I got to find ways to get points. I think the draft question is the one I got to go all in on. I was hoping it was going to be like who did who draft in this round. And I was hoping I was just going to nail it. But man, trades caught me off guard there. That's a good, hard question, though, because it's like, I mean, yeah, someone could just snipe that. But like no one's gonna know that off the top of their heads. No. Like, oh yeah, of course there are 9 trades in the first round. No,
yeah, there's no way. You basically have to ballpark it and pretty much hope to God you hit.
Exactly. That's what I was doing. I was like, I know there are a lot. I'm gonna go with 11.
All right. Well, you gave it your best shot. I'll give you not for points, but just for the fun of it, because I don't want to do anybody else unfairly. But I'll give you one more question because I think it's fun. Do you want any of the 5? Do you want the recent events? Do you want the football IQ, the draft question?
I want the draft medium. I was actually curious what the draft medium was going to be.
So the draft medium is, who was the last number 1 overall selection made by the Buffalo Bills?
Number 1 overall as in like the first pick in the entirety of the draft? Oh boy. I don't know. Was it like OJ Simpson or something like that? Like, who would the Bills have had first? Like, my mind goes back to Marcel Darius, but I know he was like the 3rd pick or something like that. I would lock it in at OJ Simpson, but I genuinely don't know.
He was a first overall pick, but it was Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith was.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. That's the thing. I was like, I know OJ was the first pick, but like that was so long ago.
Yeah, I think that was our second first overall. I was looking at it earlier. I think that was our second first overall pick. That's one of those questions that I was telling you earlier. Like, I don't know how to gauge some of these. Like, I'm sitting here thinking like, people think number 1 overall selection. So you're probably going back to some Bills all-time greats, right? So you're thinking like Jim Kelly, which I think most people know wasn't a first overall pick. Andre Reid was not. And then you got like maybe a guy like Thurman Thomas, OJ Simpson was, and then Bruce Smith. Those are probably like the 5 guys you're thinking about. And if you know a couple of them, then you're narrowing your choices down to like 2
I think it's probably a fair medium. I'm just not good with history. I'm genuinely like my draft knowledge is the last like 5 years. So like when you asked me the history question and I was like, I got to go easy. And then it was literally just last season. That's why I could get it, because it was just last season. My football history knowledge, not good. I will admit that.
My football history knowledge, I just host the thing, man. I would probably at most get 50 points if I took all 5 easy questions. Like I'm not very good at
dude.
Trivia.
That's what I should have done. I should have gone easy with every single one and then nailed because I would have got the medium draft one wrong. Now that I know what it was.
Well, hey, I mean, you could have. I mean, at most, if you take all easy and then you take like a hard hypothetically for one of them, you just tie number 1, so you still don't even get the top. Hansel had one hell of a run.
Yeah, what did he do? Did he do all easies and a hard, or what was his mix, if you remember?
Hansel, I think he hit the medium one to begin with. I think he had 2 mediums to start, so that put him at 40, and then I think he took the
off the bat, and then you're just like, yeah, give me points.
Pretty much. I think that's the route he took. He hit a very, very what I thought was kind of tricky medium question, which put him over the 8 ball. But yeah.
Now I got to go check it out.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it, man. I'm definitely going to I've been telling all my early guests that I'm going to have them back on once I really refine this whole thing. Yeah. So keeping that same promise with you. And it was a very good time, man. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, no, I had a great time. Very happy to be on and happy to be back whenever you're ready for me, man.
Definitely. I'll be sure to let you know. I'm also going to get you on. Me and Justice definitely want to have you back.
Yes.
On, so I got to get you back on for that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that will be all for the, I was going to say home field advantage for the Cave on Monday night here at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. You guys can check it out every single Monday. I have a very special guest each and every Monday. Kendall, I've been saying it all show, but he's one of the smartest minds, although maybe his trivia score might not be showing it at the moment.
I knew this was going to happen.
He really, truthfully is one of the smartest minds in the entire community, and this trivia score is just a bunch of fooey.
Thank you,
at
man.
the end of the day. He really is one of the brightest out there. So I appreciate you for coming on. I appreciate everybody for sticking around in the comments. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys probably for my next video whenever I get off my ass to do that, but definitely for the next show. And I'll see y'all guys later. Go Bills. Peace.